Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Now at McDonald's, a McDouble is $2.50, so you can get your gym gains on. Or just get lunch for only $2.50. Get more value on the under $3 menu.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hello, and welcome to the Assassin's Creed Lorecast. I'm Teacup.
And I'm She-Cup. We are so excited to bring you this podcast dedicated to unraveling the mysteries woven into the Assassin's Creed universe.
Each episode, we'll be diving into a different lore discussion, from Pieces of Eden, solar flares, and the Isu, to the Hidden Ones, the Order of Ancients, and of course, the Animus. We will seek to uncover it all.
So step into the Animus, join us in the shadows, and maybe even take a leap of faith. Hello and welcome to the Assassin's Creed Lorecast. My name is Shelby. You also know me as She-Cup, and I'm here with my co-host.
Hey, I am Austin or Teacup.
That you are, and we are back with another Assassin versus Templar episode. Some of my favorites on this podcast, so I'm going to let Austin introduce it.
Yeah, it is some of my favorites too, and just not to tangent early, but I feel like we got enough positive feedback that I made this a permanent segment of our episode rotation.
Yeah.
Just because I think it's interesting, and there really is. We could do this forever.
We could. I don't think we're gonna.
We're gonna, but there are so many historical characters and leaders that we have barely brushed the surface.
Mm-hmm. True.
But today, we have been talking a lot about, different people, and we've jumped across the timeline. We're going a little more modern. I guess modern is really a subjective term.
I mean, we're still over 100 years ago.
Yes.
At the latest, 102. So.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. So maybe, never mind. We're at the, turn of the century-ish into the 1920s and beyond. Not really beyond, but we're going over to Russia, which is, I think, one of the very extremely fascinating countries in Europe in its history. And we're going to talk about Vladimir Lenin.
Communist, father of Leninism, big guy.
In a lot of ways, father of the Soviet Union. Yeah. I know that he technically does not rule over its, he sees its conception, but he's not really over it for very long.
Yeah.
So he is a Russian revolutionary politician and political theorist. He was the first head of government of Soviet Russia from 1917 until his death in 1924. And of the Soviet Union from 1922 until his death. This is really important because this is a huge point in history, because Russia is on Germany's side in World War I.
Mm-hmm.
And they pull out of this war because of his revolution, because of the Bolshevik Revolution. It really changes the landscape of how this war is fought, because Germany no longer has as robust support as it did before. And once America gets involved, it's really over for Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And so like this is a big thing. And I remember one time when I took AP European history, my teacher got really, really upset at our textbook and had to craft a different lesson because our textbook gave a paragraph to the Russian Revolution.
That's crazy. That is so crazy.
And like you can agree with the politics or not or whatever you want like in there, but like this culturally changes the foundation of Europe and is going to set up the entirety of the 20th century.
Yeah, like at this point, it's not about communism versus capitalism versus socialism versus monarchy versus democracy. It's not about any of that. It's about how, really and truly, what it's about is about how the traditionalist way we've always done things is no longer working in a modern world. And we need to do something new. And I don't want to say Russia's the first ones to say that. They're absolutely not. But that theme in the 1900s and 20th century, like that's the theme of the century.
I mean, they say history is cyclical for a reason.
Yeah, they do. And it's true.
I mean, look at the 2020s so far.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
But anyway, let's get into Lenin. He obviously, as I mentioned, he found the Bolsheviks. He is like not really the founder, but like again, like with Malcolm X in this thing, he puts them on the map. Is a little more like that. Like, no, he didn't start them, but when they're not really who they are until he joins.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so he was the leader of what would be known as the October Revolution that we talked about. So Lenin builds on the ideas of Karl Marx, which we've talked about Karl Marx on the show a lot. And he basically makes it his own, and it gets called Leninism. And this is a really, really, really important point that I feel like needs to be said on this podcast given our current world climate. There are very, very few people today, followers of communists and followers of political idealists, that could authentically call themselves a Marxist.
Okay.
In the thing that like his ideas have been taken and adapted by Lenin, by Mao, by all these communist leaders, that we really are kind of understanding what other people interpreted Karl Marx to say versus what Karl Marx said.
I do honestly almost see, and communism I feel like has such a loyal following in some circles of the internet that baffles me, that it almost feels like a religion to some people. And with what you're saying about like, oh, well, these teachings of Marx have been not corrupted, but in a way corrupted with the teachings of other people. That's exactly what happens to religions.
Yeah, I'm very much reminded of the sect church theory from undergrad. I just triggered Shelby, everyone, so we'll have to take a moment here.
Go ahead.
But basically the idea that like these groups follow the kind of similar trajectory of they start in these smaller sects, and as they grow, they change and follow different patterns, becoming what we quote unquote call a church or a more organized kind of religion or society or group. And like this is really kind of, I feel like what happens with Russia in a lot of ways is that Karl Marx kind of starts this grassroots movement of like kind of in a similar way to Darwin. Karl Marx is observing a natural phenomenon in history of economics and political systems and cycle that he comments on, and he says this is what happens. Lenin and people who follow after him take what Karl Marx says and says, okay, let's make it happen.
Yeah.
Whereas Karl Marx is observing what he views as a natural progression of society, similar to, Darwin observes natural stages of natural selection and evolution, whereas the social Darwinists and the eugenics say, let's make it happen.
Right. And we have talked about this actually extensively on the podcast on the Karl Marx episode.
So we can go listen to that if you want more on that But back to Lenin. Sorry, I just really felt that was necessary to say.
No, I agree. It's an important foundation.
Yes. So he grew up with parents who ironically, and I find hilarious, were monarchists. And a father who was a devout member of the Russian Orthodox Church. His mother was a Lutheran who also did not care for Christianity.
She was a Lutheran, but she wasn't a Christian?
She was a Christian. If you asked her, she was a Christian, but she didn't really care about Christian doctrine, which I guess is how you be in a Western denomination married to someone who is devoutly devoted to one of the Eastern Orthodoxies.
It feels like a contradiction.
I agree.
I didn't even know they had Lutheranism in Russia.
I mean, it's right there next to Germany.
I guess that's fair.
I mean, I guess there are several countries in between Germany and Russia.
Yeah.
But, I mean, culturally, they're near each other.
I suppose. I've always thought of Russia as its own thing.
It is. And it spans, there's the European part of Russia, and then there's the Asian part of Russia. Most of what we consider Russia is in the European side, when we talk about it. But it is a very, very big country.
I bet this episode will get banned there.
I bet it will. And so his parents were supporters of the emancipation reforms of 1861, which abolishes serfdom in Russia, officially instigating millions of Russians' right to property, ownership, and other civil liberties. I think that this timing is so funny to me.
Yeah, because this is the exact time of our Civil War.
Exactly. And the Emancipation Proclamation is happened. I believe that happens around this time because it happens before the end of the war.
And the Civil War ends in 1864.
Right. And so we're in the middle of fighting over slavery, and Russia's abolishing serfdom.
Well, I mean, we're also abolishing slavery. We're just fighting a war to do it.
Right.
It's just weird to think about. In my mind, the Civil War and World War I are completely different eras in history, and so it's hard to think
They're
about.
Only 60 years apart.
I know it's hard for me to think about people being alive through both things, but it's entirely possible.
It very much is. And so another thing that kind of gets here is, so what happens is they abolish serfdom, and similarly to the French Revolution, in this kind of time period of the revolution in America works because America was America did not have to change fundamentally about how it functions once it became its own country.
We were 13 colonies in a trench coat. We weren't a country.
Right. Right. But we had already, the liberties that we wanted to enact, the stages of economic reform and abolishment of nobility and all of those things, those weren't controversial things because the American society of the 13 colonies was already there by the time the American Revolution was happening.
Right. We never established nobility here.
Right.
We established
freedom of religion, free market trade, freedom of even career, the idea that you can, be born to poor people and rise up and make your own wealth has always been something that in the American colonies and in this part of the world with the European settlers has been an idea that they wanted to cultivate. Now, have we always done it? No. But it has been a central thing. And my point here is that these European countries are not there, which is why the model of the American Revolution doesn't translate, because those countries are not in the cultural place to do this. You have all of these serfs who are instantly granted freedom and civil liberties in this moment. And then they get in there and the only thing they have to offer is their labor.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go to employment under the very same people that they were serfs to.
Like, there's not that much difference other than the fact that, okay, you've got some civil liberties now. Like, you're probably working for the same person. You're probably doing the same job. You're probably getting paid maybe a little bit more than you were before.
Mm-hmm.
But not much, I doubt.
You have a little bit more freedom in marriage and other, like, social things but like, you're right. There's not a lot of difference. And this is what sets up the world for Lenin to come around. You know, because they're like, well, there's not much difference. Oh, well, here's this Karl Marx guy who's like, we should take ownership over our own labor. We should do all of these things. We should rise up and take back from the owners, from the managers. So this is really important for Lenin's story. His father dies of a brain hemorrhage in 1886. His older brother, Alexander, was executed for being a part of the assassination attempt on Tsar Alexander III. Within 1 year, he loses his father to a brain hemorrhage, and his brother is executed at the hands of the government. This fundamentally changes Lenin drastically. And then he goes to university where he gets influenced by socialist and Marxist ideology so much that he translates the Communist Manifesto into Russian.
Something I also think that is very crucial to understanding this context is that he's 16 when his father dies, and he's 17 when his older brother dies. This is like the perfect age for
someone to be radicalized.
Exactly. This is exactly what I was going to say. And it's the perfect situation for somebody to be radicalized into a different belief system.
Yes. So he allies himself with several Russian Soviets and reformists, and they form together the Bolsheviks. They bring them up into there, which then lead a revolution that establishes Soviet Russia as a one-party state, and eventually the birth of the USSR, Soviet Union, which would remain as a major world power for the remainder of the 20th century, really not ending until the last decade of the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably, yeah, the USSR might not exist anymore.
But like Russia's
power,
the way that Russia still operates is still very much of the USSR. Like they still try to conquer all of the countries around them. I mean, look at Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
They still, try to land grab as much as they possibly can, and they try to bully other countries. And so I think that the ways that culturally they still are Soviet Russia, I mean, are greater rather than not.
Right. So I'm not going to get into the results of the Russian Revolution and like what the historical events happened. That you can read the Wikipedia page, grab really any history book except for the one that was assigned to my European history AP class, and you can learn. The information is available readily to you in lots of places. It's a very well covered, well researched, well documented event. I do want to talk about the reforms that his regime implements, because I think they're really interesting and I think that they are important. So the first is the decree on land, and like this is really what you expect. Nationalizes landed estates of the aristocracy and the Orthodox Church for redistribution to the peasants by local government. This is like communist government 101. This is the first thing you do when you establish a communist government, is you seize all property ownership and then you redistribute it. So no big surprise here. Decree on the press. He closed opposition media outlets deemed counter-revolutionary. Although claimed to be temporary, the decree faced criticism from the Bolsheviks for undermining freedom of the press. Again, a big point I will say here in history or whatever. Those who say, oh, I'm going to take this power, I'm going to do this, and it's going to be temporary, rarely is it actually temporary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's my thing is like we can talk and I think that there are some good things about every political system and there are also a lot of bad ones about all of them. But like no matter what political system you're part of, I just feel like with some more than others, especially communism, it's always, yeah, if you give us this power, we're going to redistribute things and we're going to take charge of everything and it's going to be so much better for everyone. And they do one good thing and then immediately they're like, okay, we're going to take over the press now. And it's like, oh, okay, you're just like everyone else.
Right. You know, in Hamilton, when the George Washington is, or not George Washington, King George is singing and he's like, George Washington's giving his power and stepping away. I wasn't aware that was something a person could do.
Mm-hmm.
That is the mindset of most of the world.
Yeah.
For the most of history, is someone stepping away and willingly giving up power. That is an anathema. That is the exception to the rule when it comes to world history. The fact that the United States changes leaders every 8 years, 4 years, and relatively peaceful exchanges of power is a unique point in history.
Yeah.
And I cannot stress that enough. But the next thing that he does is a declaration of the rights of the people of Russia, granting non-Russian ethnic groups the right to secede and for independent nation states. And many declared independence: Finland, Lithuania, Latvia, Ukraine, Estonia, Transcaucasia, which is no longer a country, and Poland, all before 1920 declare their independence. Several of these countries are countries to this day. I think Transcaucasia is the only one that's not.
It does really surprise me. Like, I never think about Finland as being close, even close to Russia. Like, I just so associate it with Scandinavia and like Sweden, Denmark, all the others. Norway. But they're all so close to Russia, truthfully.
Europe is a very small continent, like geography-wise. Like,
yeah.
The way they're really close, like Europe can fit in the United States.
This is why this is why Europeans think you can go from New York to LA in a day driving. You cannot.
Driving, you can. I was like, you can technically fly there in a day.
You can. It's still a very long flight. But yeah, that's such a good point that we don't think about the geography of it enough.
Right. Europe can fit in the United States and there still be room in the United States.
Not much.
Not much, but it can. So in 1917, Lenin decrees an 8-hour workday. He also issued the decree on popular education, guaranteeing free secular education for all children, and establishes state orphanages. A literacy campaign was launched to combat mass illiteracy, with an estimated 5 million people enrolling in courses from 1920 to 1926. Here's your one good thing.
No, it looks like there's some more coming. I've looked at your
your
list, but I mean, literacy is my thing.
Yeah, I know the thing, but this is a good thing, and especially like this is something that is unique to Europe a lot. Guaranteeing secular education, is a big deal in the current climate of Europe right here. He also embraces gender equality. Laws were passed to emancipate women, giving them economic autonomy and easing divorce restrictions. At this point, it was easier to get divorced in Russia than in America.
Yeah, and it probably would be for a few decades.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, with the economic, I think women could, I looked it up. I was trying to find if they could have their own bank accounts, because that is like half a century before United States.
Yeah.
Just lots of fun things there. In January of 1918, the government decreed the separation of church and state and banned religious instruction in schools. And then the decree on workers' control, calling workers to form elected committees to monitor their enterprise's management. So these are like super-powered unions. And like Lenin has an idea that we'll talk about. The workers don't take ownership of the means of production. They don't take ownership of the company. They own their right and how they are treated in that and their contribution. That's what they own, which I think is a ironically more capitalistic take on Marxism than
true Marxism.
Than true Marxism.
I agree with that, but I also think it's much more realistic.
I do too. I think in theory and in practice, it creates more of a relational aspect between worker and owner.
Yeah.
Versus I think Marxism does paint a more combative, contrary relationship.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But yeah, if you don't have any other thoughts, we can wrap up or we can head straight to our mid-break.
All right, let's do the mid-break and we can come back and get into it.
Chronic migraine is 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine before they start. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It prevents on average 8 to 9 headache days a month versus 6 to 7 for placebo.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
It's baseball, but so much more. Go bananas for Banana Ball with ESPN on Disney+. The greatest show in sports.
Are you kidding me?
Is the phenomenon everyone's talking about.
The trick play to the plate.
Catch the Savannah Bananas and other fan-favorite teams all season long, with select games streaming with ESPN on Disney+.
Let's go!
U.S. residents, 18 plus only. Select Banana Ball games available to all Disney Plus subscribers. Terms apply.
You look like the one thing in the world Alcibiades wouldn't take to bed. Can you even see out of that thing?
Mock all you want. When those Malakas and Zakros see this beast charging towards them, they will know fear!
Let's start light. Tell me a joke.
Why must samurai always battle one another? Because there is only one way for a samurai to get ahead. Ahead. I did not say it was a good joke.
Makose! Shoot! Shoot the flying demon!
All right, welcome to the middle of the show. This is where we take time to talk about all the things that have to do with the lore cast and not the lore of Assassin's Creed. So the first thing that we always do is thank all of our amazing patrons. Thank you all so much for your support. If you want to be a patron, you can join us at patreon.com/aclorecast. That's patreon.com/aclorecast. And we are sending out merch this month. So if you're thinking about it, if you're on the fence, you better decide quickly. The next best way to support us is to leave us a rating or a review, a comment, wherever you listen. You can leave us a rating, something surely. If you do so, we will read it out on the next episode of the show. I do believe we're all caught up today. So if you leave us one when you're listening to this, you might even get it read out on the next episode we record. And the last thing I have to tell you about is our amazing Discord server. It's filled with the best people. We always say it's the best place on the internet. So if you want to come and talk about Assassin's Creed or just join a group of like-minded gamers, we are ready for you. And you can find the link to that server in the episode description. And with that, Austin, let's get back into Lenin.
All right.
No, you're right. Let's all just screw around while the world falls to pieces.
Hey, this isn't easy, you know.
Right, like we're all on vacation out here? Enough! Look, everyone's under a lot of pressure, but we're the only ones who can stop Abstergo, so we need to keep it together.
She's right. We need to be a hive mind, people.
Anybody up for some reconciliatory yoga? Anyone?
Very funny, guys.
You have my thanks. Keep the sword, Ezio. Do I know you from somewhere? Don't you recognize me? It's me, Mario!
Uncle Mario.
It's been too long, Nipote. Far too long.
Malaka! Malaka! Malaka!
So we're going to go over some personal beliefs, and then we're going to do our Assassin's Creed involvement and all of that. So Lenin obviously was a devout Marxism, and he believed his interpretation of Marxism, first termed Leninism in 1904, was the sole authentic and orthodox one, which is like such an Eastern Orthodox Catholic way of looking at an ideology.
Well, which one? Eastern Orthodox or Catholic? You can't be both.
I think that like both of them have a tendency. I mean, their whole thing is that, hey, we have the right way and the other way is wrong. At least at this point in history.
I mean, I suppose.
I want to clarify that modern day Eastern Orthodoxy and Catholicism are much more amicable towards each other than they have been historically.
Yes, I know. I hear what you're saying. I just think that people are like that. I don't think it's necessarily any group. I just think that's a human nature thing.
Yeah, I think that like everyone believes that their interpretation is the right interpretation and that's what they're going. But I think like Lenin in an ideology, personal wise, like someone who's a leader like Lenin, they have to have this ideology. They have to have this idea, because if they don't, then what's the point? Like, why can't someone else do what they're doing?
Yeah, fair.
According to his perspective, humanity would eventually reach pure communism, becoming a stateless, classless, egalitarian society of workers who were free from exploitation and alienation, controlled their own destiny, and abided by the rule from each according to his own ability, and each according to his needs. I can't say what I want to say.
What do you want to say?
We are so far from this world.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even imagine it.
I mean, well, yes, you're right. We are so far from this world, and it is my personal belief that this world is not possible with humanity alone. I do believe that human beings are inherently flawed, though we can do good. I just think that our propensity to evil and to war would always prevent this.
Mm-hmm. According to his biographers, and according to his contemporaries and people who were close to him, Lenin deeply and sincerely believed that the path he was setting Russia on would ultimately lead to the establishment of this communist society. Lenin also believed that society could not transform directly from its present state to communist, but must first enter a period of socialism. So his main concern was how to convert Russia into a socialist society. To do so, he believed that a dictatorship of the proletariat was necessary to suppress the bourgeoisie and developed a socialist economy. He defined socialism as an order of civilized cooperators in which the means of productions are socially owned. To achieve this, he saw bringing the Russian economy under state control to be his central concern, with all citizens becoming hired employees of the state, in his word. His calls for workers' controls of means of production referred not to the direct control of enterprises by their workers, but the operations of all enterprises under the control of a workers' state. And kind of before we get to this, here's this last point that I think is really important. Lenin believed that representative democracies of capitalist countries gave the illusion of democracy while maintaining the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. Describing the representative democratic system of the United States, he referred to the spectacular and meaningless duels between two bourgeoisie parties, both of whom were led by astute multimillionaires that exploited the American proletariat.
I don't disagree with all of that. I mean, I do disagree with some of it, but this is a lot of what, a lot of us are talking about today, that, the 1%, the wealthy, the Jeff Bezoses of our country, they get to decide everything, and the regular people, we don't get to decide anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, on one hand, I'm like, yeah, I get that. On the other hand, I'm like, well, that's not how it's intended to be.
Exactly. I think that this is the problem when you compare these two places, is none of them can be unchecked. Neither capitalism or communism can be left solely to its own ideology. There have to be checks and balances in there, or you lead yourselves to the same problem, just different sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And the crux of that is that people who gain power are so often unwilling to give it up.
Right. And that's what I was going to say, in that the thing that I think is the biggest issue is that we talk about these systems as if they are embodied themselves. But in reality, it's people that make up these systems of government. And people are flawed. People are, as I believe, have a tendency to want to be more powerful, to grab power when it is available, to seize power from people that they deem as lesser. And when our human nature gets in the way, I just think no matter what happens, unless something is so heavily regulated that it's impossible to, fraud or change in some way, like, there are always going to be people that do that. There are always going to be people that exploit the system to benefit themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we can't talk about it as, oh, capitalism did this, or, oh, communism said that. It's the people who make up that system that we have to talk about.
Exactly. And I think it is worth noting, I often tell people, and like when I was doing religious instruction, of like, how do you know what's right? How do you know, good denominations from the bad ones or whatever? And I always used to tell people, how something is by the fruit that it bears.
Yeah.
Under Joseph Stalin, who is Lenin's successor and builds upon his ideas, which I consider the fruit that his regime bears. Joseph Stalin is responsible for significantly more deaths than Hitler ever caused. Both are terrible. I'm not saying one is worse than the other, but when we look at the fruit that the USSR and Soviet Union bared upon the world, we have to ask the question, why? And what is the cause of that? And I think that we can do that. We can look at the fruit that America has borne, and I think that there are inherent problems with our system that are inherent in there. But we look at these quote-unquote societies. We look at China's poverty rate. We look at the treatment of the citizens in North Korea. We look at all of these places in Venezuela, in Cuba, these places that are these quote-unquote communist states. And they have the same problems that the United States does.
Yeah, because I think they're a human nature problem and not a system of governance problem.
Yeah. My dad used to say the problem with human nature is everyone has it.
Exactly. He's right. He's right.
Exactly. Well, that's my own take on that. And I think it kind of gives away where I think we're both going to land on this.
Okay.
But let's get into Assassin's Creed involvement on this. So Lenin does appear in the comic The Fall, which follows Nikolai Orlev, who is a Russian assassin, an ancestor to Daniel Cross. And so The Fall takes place as Daniel Cross is living his ancestors' memories, and also now being revealed as the sleeper agent who's going to initiate the Great Purge. That's what The Fall covers. He's mentioned in the database of Chronicles Russia, and he's affiliated with the Russian Brotherhood. His brother, Alexander, was an assassin and a close friend of Nikolai Orlov. During the October Revolution, Lenin sent a letter to Nikolai urging him to kill Tsar Nicholas, even if the Brotherhood itself no longer saw him as a threat. In 1917, Lenin, as As Lenin's party took control of Russia, he did aid the assassins greatly, giving them access to several facilities that would further their work, especially in the field of science. One such facility was located in Protivno, near Moscow, and was carefully guarded secret thanks to Lenin's intervention. This is where they experiment on the animus with Galina Voronina's mother. So I think that's worth saying here. I think Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed has gotten this wrong. I think that Leninism in and of itself leads itself to Templar ideology, because it's the idea that the world is broken and we are the caretakers who can fix it. And that is the core tenet of Templar ideology.
I disagree. I think that it makes total sense that they chose to make him an assassin. And I think about it. I don't think it's about the political ideology at all. I think it's about his brother was an assassin. And his brother's death, combined with the fact that I think that Lenin really, truly believed in this ideology because he wanted to make the world better. He wanted to make the world a better place, and that's why he comes to this ideology that he comes to, and he's like, we've got to change Russia, and we've got to get rid of the monarchy, we've got to do all these things to change it. But I don't think that he starts in the place of like, oh, we have to kill everyone. I think that he does get there, and I know that that's something that he does when he is still a young man, but like, he's in college, like he's studying, he's learning about stuff before he gets there. I kind of imagine him as just being with this group of the Bolsheviks, of the people who are like planning this, and he's not necessarily like the sole leader at this point. So I'm not certain. I don't know if we even know if he's the one that's like, yes, we should kill everyone, like we should do all this. I'm imagining it as like maybe he's just along for the ride. And so I do think it makes sense that he would want to kind of give back and help this organization that his brother was a part of, because he misses his brother. I think it's so much more about the family aspect rather than the political beliefs. Like, so often we do focus on the political beliefs in these episodes because that is a crucial tenet of it. That's very important. But this is one case where I think it's much more about the personal than the political.
And now that you say that, I really do agree with your points here. And I will concede in my own thing of like, the assassins also take this ideology of like, they are the caretakers who have to implement and be the guardians of free will, basically. And I think that like Lenin's ideas, now that reflecting on it, and you're bringing this up, helping me do that, is this kind of sense of like, he views communism and socialism and the like worker state as that kind of guardian that protects the freedom and rights of the everyday people.
Yeah, but it's notable to me that like in these comics, at least what you've presented, like he is not an assassin himself.
No, he is not. I do think that like it is noted Joseph Stalin is a Templar. I'm going to say this outright. Every single leader of World War II is a Templar. None of them are assassins.
And we've said this on the podcast before. I think that is a good decision that they made.
Yes, I think it is very good. I think it does a lot of good to like, you know, transcend this conflict from putting certain groups into history's bad guys and history's good guys. Though I will stop and say the Nazis are definitely history's bad guys.
Well, that's why they didn't make any of them the good guys.
Right. But I think that like this is taking like Lenin is an assassin friend. Joseph Stalin is not. He is a Templar and a Templar puppet.
Well, they're very different rulers too. Like I was reading on the Wikipedia earlier, like Lenin does have, you know, some violent things. Like there are some things that he does, but there's nothing on the scale of Lenin or Hitler or of Stalin or Hitler. Like, no, it's not even comparable.
And it's important to note that like the reason that there are so many Jews in Germany and Poland is because they were exiled from Russia. a decade before.
Right.
Like, Russia basically kicked them all out. Like, there are a lot of things. And had Hitler not attacked Russia, they would have stayed on his side.
No one ever learns. Like,
not to do a land invasion of Russia in winter?
Yes. Like, I just, like, don't understand what they think is going to happen here.
It's the same kind of similar principle of the British trying to conquer the marshes of South and North Carolina from the colonists. They were severely disadvantaged because the colonists realized how disadvantaged they were trying to deal with the Native Americans. And they learned.
Yeah, fair, very fair.
It's the same kind of concept. But I think that, like, I agree with, like, that he is not going to be a member of these societies. He is going to be an adjacent kind of person, which I think a lot of these political figures fall into that. I'm doing FDR is on our list, and I know we did Eleanor Roosevelt, and we talked about this, but FDR is also one of the ones I think they got wrong.
Okay. Well, you'll have to stay tuned, listeners, to see why we think that.
Yes. All right. Do you have anything else to add?
I don't. Thank you for the research. This is always an interesting one. I don't know a ton of Russian history, so it's always good to learn a little bit more. And I hope you listeners felt the same. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Assassin's Creed Lorecast. If you have any lore questions, theories, or topics you'd like us to unpack, join our Cups Podcasting and More Discord server. It's the best place on the internet.
You can also support the show financially and ensure its continuation by becoming a patron at patreon.com/ACLorecast. If you enjoyed the show or learned something new today, please subscribe, leave us a review or comment, or join the Patreon.
The Assassin's Creed Lorecast is part of the Robots Radio podcasting network. If you enjoyed our intro or outro music, give a big shout out to Pipeman Studios.
Until next time, Assassins, and remember, stay in the shadows to serve the light.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
When a wasteland detective and a vault girl cross paths, no criminal is safe.
You're both under arrest.
Don't move a muscle if you know what's good for you.
Based in Bethesda's Fallout series, follow Walter and Bunny as they traverse the Texas Commonwealth and New Vegas, busting big crime rings.
We'll need all we can to expand into Vegas territory.
And surviving anything the wasteland can throw at them.
It's him! It's the Mothman!
Featuring a series of nail-biting narratives and guest stars from across the Fallout community. It's anybody's guess what thrilling case is up next.
War never changes, does it, Bunny?
No, it certainly does not.
True Vault Escapades, a Fallout audio drama. Available anywhere you get podcasts.